Hello and welcome to LocoFi. This is part 2 and the final video about update 2.20 released back in March 2019. In part 1 we saw several settings that were introduced on the config screen. However, we discussed only some of them in detail. In this part 2, we will go over the remaining features that primarily deal with setting scale speeds and speed matching. In this part 2, we start with UP2557, the same loco we used in part 1 of the video, same power supply, and UP-EMD ST70 ACE 8325 to speed match with the 2557 as our test setup. So let's go and take a look at those settings now. So let's start with UP2557 as our first candidate for adjusting some of these settings. Again, we recommend that you have the Loco Config cheat sheet in front of you as a reference while playing this video and obviously doing the settings. Which can be downloaded from the resources section of our website at www.wifi-modelrailroad.com. And so let's look at this first setting. So the first setting is the start speed step. Now the start speed step, and then there is a speed step delay. The start speed step is basically a setting which tells you exactly when the loco just barely starts to move, which is like scale speed 0. There is some motor power that goes in the beginning towards getting the wheels to start turning, and it varies from one locomotive to another. And to bring it up to speed, for all the locomotives, it has to barely start overcoming friction, and that's when we are able to set the speed to 0, and that's what we need to adjust before we can even consist. So just move the switch over to the right and you will see a warning dialog which basically says that when setting these settings, the locomotive may take off suddenly. So it's a good idea to have like a circular loop of test track, because then the locomotive will just keep on going in circles, and just hit OK, and let's see. Now you move the slider back and forth and see when the locomotive barely starts moving, and then you move a little lower when the locomotive barely stops moving, and kind of take an average of the two readings, and do it as many number of times as you seem comfortable with, and arrive at a number. And once you have marked that number, slide the start speed switch back to off, and there you go. So then there is another setting called the start step delay, which I would like to mention, which is basically a setting when the locomotive, even though it has like started like speed step 0, you still want to give it a certain delay. For example, in a consist, lead locomotive starts moving and you want to pull some of the slack there, so you may want to put a start step delay there, or just for more prototypicalness, having a small gap before the locomotive actually starts moving, is just to give that feel of realism. And this is a setting between 0 and max start speed step, because you cannot have a delay more than the start speed step itself, which is obviously wrong. So the third setting we move on to is the max speed step. Now max speed step, as you can see, by default is set at 255, and the moment you throw the slider switch towards right hand side and you accept the warning dialog, the locomotive is going to take off at full speed. So be sure that you have a circular track, a test track to perform these tests. Now in our case we have chosen a track length of 18 feet, and we have this little calculator, the yellow boxes, that gives us the number of seconds it would take to say set a scale speed of 80 miles an hour, and we just try to change the slider at the bottom and adjust the speed so that our loop of 18 feet gets completed in that number of settings, which are seconds, which are shown in the yellow box. So let's start that adjustment. So as you can see, I'm using the yellow stick in front of the outer loop of track as a marker. So as soon as the locomotive head crosses over, I just start the timer and try to record, the readings and take an average to see if it corresponds to the number of seconds that's shown in the yellow box. And we just keep repeating this process over and over until we are comfortable with a value that is exactly the same number of seconds, or at least close to it. If it's a few milliseconds here and there, that's okay. It's not really going to make much of a difference. But if you're really concerned, then you may even try to get some kind of a device that actually measures the scale speed, and that way you can set it up. So we'll just fast forward this process for now, and just take it from there. So you can see we are done configuring the 13.4 seconds, which corresponds to a scale speed of 80 for this locomotive. Now we're just gonna set the max display speed to 120 and exit out of the screen. So that's another setting I want to talk about, the max display speed. Even though we have a scale speed of 80, why would you want to display a max speed of 120 and not 80? This is for the reason, just another level of flexibility. If you want to show 120 on one locomotive, 80 on another, but you still want to consist. So when you consist, you use the scale speed, but when you want to display, you can just use any random number you want, For example, you may have a layout, you want to maybe show a bullet train running there, which is setting the scale speed of, like 300-400 miles an hour or whatever, is probably not feasible. So you choose its scale speed, but you set the display speed to something larger, more, which coincides with the actual speed of the locomotive. So just another setting. So let's start configuring the UP8325. It's put on the outer loop now, and the UP2557 is put on the inside track. So we'll use the same procedure of timing and then adjusting a speed step until and unless we are very close to the value we are expecting in the yellow box. And let's give it a fast forward and see how it welds, how it does. Again, we adjust the display speed and exit the screen. Now that we have both the locos set to same scale speed, and now comes the most interesting part, which is checking if both locos can run together. Now the only difference between this experiment and consisting is that in consisting you are using one screen to control both the locomotives, which is an update which is due for a long time, and we apologize, we are working on that, but just to see the speed matching in action, let's place both the locos a few inches apart and on the outer loop, and manage both of them, and then adjust the throttle in a way that they come very close to each other. And for the purposes of our demo, we're just gonna set the momentum to like 0 so that we can immediately see the effect of increase and decrease of speed without wasting much time. So let's do it and see how it looks. We are also going to turn off the haptic controls because with the increase in the number of throttle steps for finer control, if we enable haptic controls and the sounds, it kind of gets annoying. So let's turn them off as well. So let's fire up both the engines. Now that we have them spaced close apart, we have UP2557 in the front and followed by UP8325. Let's give it, the first one, a little throttle. So the UP2557 is on the move at about 14 miles per hour, followed by 8325 at about 10 miles an hour, and we're gonna speed up the follower slowly so that kind of catches up, and we'll speed them up to about 40 miles per hour scale speed. Just watch the speedometer. So, for both the locos, you will see that when the needle is at 40 miles per hour, both of the locos will be moving at the same speed. We'll just try to bring them closer by adjusting the throttle slightly, and let's see. As you can see now, both the locos are at 40 miles per hour, and there's very little gap between them, and they are very close together, moving at a constant speed of 40 miles per hour. So let's stop them, and we won't shut them down. We just stop the locos and we'll see the process in action again. And we'll again speed them up to 40 miles per hour, and we will even try to couple them out by slowly leading the follower up to the lead loco so that there is not much stress on the couplers, and just keep increasing the trailing loco's speed slightly and until it catches up. So now you can see the locos are very close together, and here they go, they are coupled. And so that's it for now. We'll start the throttle down, shut down, and back to the main screen. So speed matching and the way two locomotives were coupled in the demo, it was a way to show how easily it can be achieved. And it forms a precursor to consisting, wherein instead of two independent controls, one throttle will be used to move the locomotives together after they are coupled. Of course, if they are not coupled, they will move at a constant distance because there will still be only one control. And that's the part which we call consisting is upcoming. So please let us know what you think of the features introduced in this video in the comment section below, and any other features you would like to see. Thank you. Enjoy.